The world is becoming a stranger and stranger place. The works of the Leviathan are coming into fruition, and nothing is going to get into their way. Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano has a new letter on that topic, and it's way too spicy for this place. In it, he hits everything going on in the culture right now, including topics that our lovely hosts don't really want us to discuss here. So I put it on the podcasting audio-only side of things. If you follow this show as a backup on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, or websites like that, you can hear the letter in full. And if not, check out the pinned comment, where the full letter is available in audio form in an embedded player at returntotradition.org. Again, that's the pinned comment, the top comment here in the comment section on YouTube that is made permanently at the top of the comments here. There is an underlying issue in that letter that is a good segue into this topic here on YouTube today. The institutions of the church have been put into the hands of the Leviathan and put to the purposes of the beast and not that of Christ the King and traditionally the purposes of his church. That is evident by the now much discussed Traditionis Custodes, a document that now almost 2 months after its release has resulted in an ever-changing landscape, as well as, of course, what Francis has had the church doing for the last nearly decade now, and what has been really going on in the church for many decades since the council. But the latest act from Francis is that the most prestigious university for American seminarians and scholars to attend in Rome has banned training in the traditional Mass and closed its traditional liturgical offerings down in accordance with Traditionis Custodes. Special thanks to Rupture for breaking this story. And so from them we get this. If you're watching this, if you're watching your screen, what you're seeing here is the announcement posted at the PNAC, the Pontifical North American College in Rome, announcing the ending of all their Latin Mass programs and liturgies. That is the actual posting on your screen there, made available by Rupture. To the community, from the Rector. Date, 31st of August, 2021. Traditionis Custodes and celebrating according to the Missale Romanum 1962 at the Pontifical North American College on the Janiculum. When Pope Benedict XVI issued Summorum Pontificum in 2007, the Pontifical North American College, in accordance with his motu proprio, began official training in the quote-unquote extraordinary form, and provided for Masses according to the Missale Romanum of 1962, so to be included in the regular rotation of special Masses on Saturdays. In addition, the college provided liturgical supplies that were needed for priests to celebrate according to the quote-unquote extraordinary form. In light of the motu proprio of Pope Francis, Traditionis Custodes, which was issued on July 16, 2021, and after having received canonical counsel, the college remains consistent with what the Holy Father has asked of us. Consequently, the following will be the practice of the Pontifical North American College on the Janiculum. Because permission from one's diocesan bishop to celebrate according to the Missale Romanum 1962 is not sufficient for priestly faculty or student priests to celebrate according to Missale Romanum 1962 outside of their respective dioceses, there will no longer be quote-unquote extraordinary form training taking place, nor celebrations according to the Missale Romanum 1962. This includes the student-led ones, which were done generally on Saturday mornings in the past. The rotation of special Masses on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. will be modified so that the celebration of Novus Ordo Mass in Latin will replace the former quote-unquote extraordinary form Mass. Consequently, Saturday afternoons at the 12:30 p.m. Mass, other than on travel-permitted weekends, during vacations, and during exam periods, there will be a rotation of the celebration of Mass in this order: Novus Ordo Mass in Latin, Mass in Spanish, Mass in Spanish, Mass Novus Ordo Mass in Latin, and Mass in Spanish. And that is the full text of the announcement of the end of the traditional Latin Mass at the PNAC, the Pontifical North American College in Rome, one of the most influential colleges in Rome, and one that many, many seminarians aspire to be sent to from the United States to Canada, or rather to Rome. That's not a small deal, and it points to something going on in the church that I've pointed out a lot lately, that the church is headed in a clear but new direction, and that direction is rupture. Over at Marco Tossati's website, a contributor had a piece published that points to this reality. Quote, "It seems increasingly clear to me that the action of the leadership of the Church under the present pontiff is moving very clearly in a certain direction, and the motu proprio Traditionis Custodes is only one stage on this path. In previous pontificates, we proceeded in alternating steps, back and forth, to try to keep everything together. In this, we walk quite quickly in one direction, and we give up seeking the consent of an increasingly consistent part of the Church, sometimes even denigrated and accused of behavior dictated by mental pathologies. With the human gaze, this is very annoying. With the gaze of God, it is almost a good thing. When some phenomena cannot be together because one goes on one side and one on the other, a laceration is created. The situation of the Church today always reminds me of a beautiful poem by the Spanish poet Juan Ramón Jiménez. Quote, "How deep are my feet on the earth? How high are my wings in the sky? At what pain of a torn heart?" End quote. Here the path of the Church in recent decades has seemed to be a torn heart, with the popes in the last decades trying to parry blows from the right and left. Now it becomes clear. People are able to see clearly that the direction is one, and that for a certain Catholicism, to which great reverence should be given, evidently there is no room. Clarity, however painful, is ultimately best. End quote. Clarity certainly can be a painful thing, and in some ways is akin to being in a pitch-black room only to have floodlights suddenly turned on, leaving you momentarily blinded by the light. Clarity can be a painful thing to receive, and in these days many of our friends have tuned out or embraced despair, due to the flood of information and the sudden realization of a new reality. What is that reality? The author from that short excerpt of an article from Tossati's website points out that we have a direction the institutional church is heading in under Francis the Great and Merciful, and it is one of rupture. Or is it one of actualizing an existing rupture already? That should be food for thought for anyone examining this issue, and if you've listened to me for a while now, you'd know that I tend to believe that there was a rupture with the past of some kind. I'm not really the only one to have noticed this either. A recent article was published by fans of Francis's suppression of the traditional faith that calls for him to go further. Again, revisiting Rupture, they published a piece that rather explains that piece rather well, as most of us have missed something in the document Traditionis Custodes in the battle over the Latin Mass. Headline from Rupture: Canceling Pope Benedict. Reflections on a recent article in the Hermeneutic of Rupture. The author tells us that Traditionis Custodes is a more profound document than anyone has reported on, as it is an institutionalization of the hermeneutic of rupture. He reviews the article by the friend of Francis that I alluded to a moment ago, which is good because the original appears to be behind a paywall that I don't have access to. But the gist is this. Now that Francis has hammered us rad-trad neo-Pelagians, he must go after another quote-unquote error of Benedict XVI. In that review from Rupture, we get this, quote, "Here we have yet another rearguard attempt to achieve the permanent institutionalization of the hermeneutic of rupture, which Benedict XVI had dedicated his pontificate to combating. We are told in this article that with his motu proprio, quote, Francis defended both the liturgical reform of Vatican II and the Council's ecclesiology, but that to be more thorough, Francis should correct a document of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith from 2007, which asserts that Vatican II did not change the doctrine of the Church." In the rest of the article, we can easily see the point. The author seems to bang his fist on the table and insists, but yes, Vatican II really did change everything. Nothing could be the same anymore. You can't believe like they did before the council, and you can't worship like they did before the council. Although the author slams those he calls Lefebvrists, it seems not to occur to him that he shares their basic thesis that Vatican II changed everything, disagreeing only on whether the change was good or bad. End quote. Where's the lie? The author of the Rupture piece, which we'll get back to in a moment, goes on to describe the three tangible positions in the Church for those of us who examine this issue. The first is the hermeneutic of rupture angle from among the traditional Catholic perspective, which tries to point out there really can't be a logical continuity between Vatican II and our present time, when those who implemented Vatican II are responsible for so many contradictions on severe matters from before the Council. There is a contradiction on numerous topics expressed in the Council from the time before it. The second position being that similar rupture position that celebrates this rupture and calls it a good thing, which the first position does not call a good thing. And finally, the third position, the Benedict position, which tries to have a hermeneutic of continuity. For rupture would mean that the Church had been subverted and that the institutions of the Church have in some manner been turned against Christ and the Church itself. He does a good job of explaining this in more detail than I do, which is why you can read all this stuff in my show notes today at returntotradition.org. That's the name of this YouTube channel with a .org at the end. Just look for the post with today's video title in it, or one with Vigano's name in it, and you'll find all the sources there. But then we get this, quote, "Even from his time as Cardinal Prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, Ratzinger saw clearly that opposition to the pre-Vatican II liturgy was more about opposition to the pre-Vatican II Church than it was about aesthetics or liturgy as such. He put his finger on the problem when he said," and then here the author quotes an interview with Ratzinger in a 2003 book by Alswin Reed, quote, "A sizable party of Catholic liturgists seems to have practically arrived at the conclusion that Luther, rather than Trent, was substantially right in the 16th century debate. It is only against this background of the effective denial of the authority of Trent that the bitterness of the struggle against allowing the celebration of Mass according to the 1962 Missal after the liturgical reform can be understood. The possibility of so celebrating constitutes the strongest and thus, for them, the most intolerable contradiction of the opinion of those who believe that the faith in the Eucharist formulated by Trent has lost its value, which is why he promoted the practical solution he did, in order to emphasize that there is no essential break, that there is continuity in the Church, which retains its identity. It seems to me indispensable to continue to offer the opportunity to celebrate according to the Old Missal as a sign of the enduring identity of the Church." That was Benedict XVI. That is what it was and is really at stake, the enduring identity of the Church. End quote. The identity of the Church is what is at stake, the identity of the Catholic faith. That brings me back to the closure of the Pontifical North American College, or PNAC's Latin Mass program. No longer will young American seminarians and visitors be able to learn the traditional liturgy from the most prestigious school in Rome that North Americans can attend. No longer will the institutions of the Church promote the traditional liturgy and the passing on of knowledge from one generation to the next. Remember that for an identity in a culture to be preserved, it must be passed on from one generation to the next. We saw a hint of this with some bishops forbidding anyone to receive the sacraments from traditional Latin Mass communities if they are not registered members of said community, and they cannot be confirmed in those parishes, but must be confirmed in a nearby Novus Ordo parish. A few bishops interpreted Traditionis Custodes in that way. The passing on of knowledge is key to controlling and preserving anything akin to what those who hold to Francis's position on Vatican II is, the preservation of the birth of a new age in the Church, the age of accompaniment, the age of a rupture with the past that is boasted of and celebrated and not mourned. Those of us who mourn it are the ones getting called Neo-Pelagians and super rigid. That is what is key to understanding here. Personally, I believe their struggle to preserve the rupture of Vatican II will fail in the end, but at this time we face the battle for the heart and soul of the Church and the institutions of the Church, key to preserving that identity, are being turned against traditional Catholics. What are they so scared of? Let me know in the comments, please. I have my ideas on this, and I've hinted at them in the recent past, but I'd like to hear from you on this, so let me know what you think is going on here. And again, if you want to hear that Vigano letter, check the pinned comment. As always, pray for the Church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.